Hey leader, David Burkus here. And our last video, we talked about what you need to do in your first week as a new leader. And that comes with a lot of questions that we just didn't have time to answer. And so what we decided to do is rapid fire, knock all of those questions out so that you, whether you're a first-time manager or a senior leader, can be the best version of a leader you can be. Here they are. How do I get my team to like me? Look, I tell this to my 10-year-old and my 12-year-old. You can't control whether or not people have an affinity for you. What you can control is whether or not they have a reason to dislike you. And so as long as you're kind, as long as you're honest, transparent, and inclusive, you're going to eliminate the reasons for disliking you. Some of them, 4% of the population are psychopaths statistically, so you might run into somebody who just doesn't like you. It's probably the person who was passed over when you were promoted. You can't control that. What you can control is removing every possible reason they might have for disliking you, and trust that if you're fair, honest, transparent, kind, inclusive, over time the majority of your team's going to end up liking you. If you're trying to strike a balance between trusting your team, delegating, and just relying on them to bring it back to you and feeling like a micromanager, there's probably two things to say here. The first is that trust isn't something your team should have to earn from you. It should be something that's given as a leader and then pulled back when they violate that trust, right? So don't just think like you have to earn your trust. Just give it away, right? And then maybe take some of that trust away from people who violate it, because there's going to be a lot of top performers who you don't want to have to earn your trust. They're going to feel like you're a micromanager. The second thing is, I think the best way to balance autonomy and accountability is to do it at a team-wide level. So I'm a huge fan of, for example, huddles, where you have the whole team together reporting out on what they've completed and what they're focused on next, any roadblocks, any opportunities for help, because then they're not and hold a little bit more accountable are, it's going to be pretty obvious who they are in the first few weeks. If you're thinking about, okay, checking in not only as a team, how are you running huddles or all hands meetings, and then how often are you doing it individually? I think the best rhythm is probably team-wide meetings weekly. Most companies I work with, they settle in on that. Now, you might have a reason to scale that to daily or to pull that back if you're a very autonomous, like a remote organization. But weekly is a good rhythm to start. And I think at least once a month, you should be having a 30-minute conversation or longer with every individual employee, not only about their work, but about their immediate sort of short-term goals, so you can understand where they want to go in their career. Now, all of that said, that's like a starting point. If you find out that all of your huddles that happen once a week, let's say it's every Monday morning, turn into people just reading their calendar and not talking about the top line, most important stuff, you might want to stretch that out. And if you find that people are having to come to you with updates more frequently than once a week, then you might want to condense it. Same thing with your people. If you find that, hey, I'm going to meet with everyone for 30 minutes at least once a month, and certain people are coming to you way more often, then just make a note that those people, maybe they need 15 minutes every 2 weeks instead. Everybody's going to be a little bit different here. And it's not about treating everyone equally on the one-on-one check-ins. It's about giving everyone what they actually need to succeed. One of the hardest things for anyone to do, whether they're a frontline manager or a middle manager, is to change the culture of the entire organization. I have bad news for you. It's probably not going to happen. But there is a reason you were chosen for that role. And what you can do is change the culture on your team to make it one that you think is a little bit better, a little bit more conducive to becoming a high-performing team. Now, you can't be in total violation of the norms and values and things like that of the organization that hired you, but if they're a very command and control style and you think autonomy works a little bit better, then the best time to kind of make those changes may be in the first few months, because if you settle in on doing it the way every other manager in the company does it, you're not going to be able to change a year from now. So now is the best time to kind of think about that. How can I, inside that command and control structure, give my team just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more autonomy? It's not going to change the whole company's culture, but your team's going to appreciate it. And if and when they win, people are going to come and start asking you questions about how you're doing what you're doing with that team. No, really, this is a question about how do you go from bud to boss, as my friend Kevin Eikenberry would say. Like, how do I not make that weird? Where the weird comes in is that there are sort of new boundaries. And so you have to be very clear upfront about what you can and can't talk about. Where you may have been with that friend and you may have been able to just sort of, rag on or playfully talk about situations in the company, et cetera. Now you've got to kind of set those clear boundaries right away. But What you can always still do is take an interest in people's personal life, right? So what you talk about might get limited, what you're able to share from you and about the company, but what you can do to show an interest in them, that shouldn't change. And in fact, if that does change, that's when people feel alienated and alone. I mean, yes, it's gonna be a little weird because you can't talk about certain things, but you can always stay interested in every person that used to be a friend of yours and is now a teammate that you're having to supervise. I think actually the worst thing you can do here is sort of sugarcoat it, right? I mean, certainly you're not gonna be able to say, well, we've had some great times together, because you've never actually been together. I think you could just be very, very clear about what the news there is to deliver and very clear about what you're able to do moving forward, right? So if it's layoffs, obviously people are gonna understand that's out of your hands. It's not like you made a list of people you wanted to get rid of, but you have to be very matter of fact in the fact that it's happening. But the very next thing I would say is the way in which I'm committed to supporting those people. Remember, like, great bosses, they're the people who care about their people when they're not actually their people. And so if you can pair that bad news that you just have to rip the Band-Aid, be transparent about, if you can pair that with here's what I can do to support you, then I think you're gonna get a lot more respect from your team, and they're gonna appreciate the fact that you didn't pull any punches, you didn't fake sugarcoat anything, you were honest, you were transparent, you were fair, but you were also supportive. This is super frustrating because there is zero evidence that extroverts make better leaders or that introverts are poor leaders. And yet, in so many organizations, we promote the extroverted, seemingly confident people, right? But remember that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't lean into your strengths. It probably means you have a little bit more facilitative decision-making style, a little bit more inclusive way you run your meetings. And so the only thing you really need to get good at, please do not change your personality. The only thing you may need to get good at that might be uncomfortable to you is being able to sing your own praises and your team's praises. When good things happen, you can't just lean on introversion as a reason not to share them. The reason the extroverts get promoted is that they're the ones running off boasting about all the great things they do. So you gotta be extroverted about that. But you don't have to change your whole style. You don't suddenly have to talk over everyone in meetings or even run the meeting. You just have to make sure that the people above you and the people throughout the whole organization are hearing about your team's successes as much as they are forced to hear about them from all the extroverts. If you're looking to lead smarter, then subscribe to my channel right here for more helpful insights just like this. And if you've got a question or a problem, leave a comment below. I'm here and this channel is here to help you build your best team ever.